Okay, so how can I take someone who has zero coding knowledge, have never written a single line of Apex and or any other programming language, and turn this person into a developer in 12, sometimes even 10, sometimes even as little as 8 weeks without this person hustling all the time, right? So first of all, why can I speak about it, right? So this is not a random topic because I've done it more than 30 times so far. And I have all these testimonials from all these people, right? So I've done it many, 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 many times. And I even worked with people like Evaldes, for example. He is a golden hoodie recipient, right? So how do I do this? And also, on top of that, I have over 2,000 people who took my course. I have a lot of students. I helped thousands of people indirectly with my courses, and I help over 30 doing it one to one with me. So today I want to explain the whole system, how I do it, so that you can replicate it. Okay, so you can sit down and say, okay, well, maybe I can do this, maybe I should change my tactic. What I assume in this case, I assume that you are working in the Salesforce ecosystem, right? And that you are usually something like top 10% of the market. I don't advise you to switch into Salesforce development if you are just starting out. I don't advise you switching into Salesforce development if you are not in the Salesforce ecosystem already, or if you're not a if you're not a developer already, right? So those two things, you're working in Salesforce, and that can be anything. It can be architect, your senior Salesforce admin, senior Salesforce consultant, all of this. If that sounds like you, BA, also senior project managers, all of this, if that's you, then you can switch into Salesforce development relatively easy. And I want to show you how to do it today, right? It's not a big of a deal, and I said it doesn't take a lot of time. Like, I literally do it with people in 12 weeks. Of course, if you're gonna be doing it yourself, it's probably gonna take you a little bit more than 12 weeks, right? But it doesn't mean that you cannot benefit from the from this video. Okay, so this is going to be, as you see, it's going to be freestyle video, very little editing. I'm not gonna edit it too much. I'm just gonna explain the whole system to you so that you can replicate it. Okay, so I'm gonna do it an example of Thomas. Thomas. Let's see if I can find his testimonial somewhere here written. Thomas. Here we go. So feel free. Here we go. This is Thomas, right? Feel free to listen to this video like on the double speed, so it's good. It might be a little bit of a long video. Okay, so Thomas, he was working as a business analyst, right? So you don't have to be a senior Salesforce admin or something. Okay, so as a Salesforce business analyst with no prior coding experience, I found Igor's approach to teaching invaluable. His ability to break down complex programming, blah, 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 blah. From the very first lesson, I was writing Apex classes. Okay, this is key. Just right amount of weekly homework. This is also key, right? And the online platform Learn Apex, okay? So the combination of Igor's personal mentoring and self-paced. This is also one of the keys. 10 out of 10, right? Okay, of course 10 out of 10 because Thomas is a perfect example for someone who had literally zero coding skills and literally 12 weeks after, I think there was some vacation in between, but 12 weeks after, he was writing integrations, right? So he was able to write, like, to combine two systems. He was writing already triggers, queuable, scheduled, trigger framework, trigger handlers. All of this he was already writing from complete zero without being able to code before. Okay, so what's what's going on here? There are also, so I mentioned that there are few requirements, right? Before you start. Okay, so let's write requirements. I guess the most important is that you're like top. I usually work with like people who are already something, but I would say you're senior level, right? Senior or at least mid-level person, right? So if you're a junior admin, doesn't mean you cannot switch into Salesforce development. You can, right? It's not so much about this. It's more about um how much secure do you feel on your job? Like, do you feel like you secure? And more important, it's about like whatever I'm gonna say here, right? It's not about like this hardcore requirements. It's more about, do you feel you can do it? If you feel that you can do it, you can, right? This is literally true. Like if you feel that you can do it, you definitely can. But if you think that you can't, you're also right. You can't. Right? So that's how it works. If you really believe that you can do it, and if you are already working in any role in Salesforce, what I can definitely say is that you have the brain, you have what it takes. You have the brain to like physically understand Salesforce development, right? Then it just comes down to motivation and can you actually pull it off. All right, so this is usually I work with the senior and mid-level people. Salesforce, you need to already know Salesforce well, right? So that's it's super hard to become a Salesforce developer without knowing Salesforce, but that was the case for me, for example, right? It doesn't mean you can't, right? There are two cases how people end up in Salesforce development. Either you're a developer before, or you're in Salesforce before, right? In both these cases, you would need to learn a little bit of Salesforce. So for me, it was the coming from the from the development standpoint. I was already a developer, but I did not know anything about Salesforce, and then I became a Salesforce developer by learning Salesforce and all the Apex stuff. So I assume that usually for 90% people who listen to this, it's gonna be Salesforce, that you already know some Salesforce. Okay, uh, that's pretty much it about those requirements. But then there are also additional requirements. And they are even more important, I would say. So first of all, let's say believe. You need to believe that you can do it. As I said, this is the most important thing. Without this, you can just give up immediately. You don't need to proceed, like close the video, go like that. That's if you believe that you cannot do something, then you can't. But if you believe that you can, then you just need to put some work into it. Okay, so we have belief. And another thing is that you need to have at least, I would say, the sweet spot is 5 to 10 hours per week. Is it much? It kind of depends on your job, right? If you're working like a consultant, for example, and you're spending 60 hours working, probably gonna be super hard for you to pull that off. And there's no life hack around it. I'm sorry. Like if you wanna learn something hard like Salesforce development, it's not easy, right? It's hard. If you wanna learn something hard, you need to find time for it. That's just it. That's just how it works. Without time, you won't be able to do it. And the more time you have on your disposal, the quicker you can, the faster you can progress. For example, so we're gonna take example of Thomas, right? Thomas was getting up at 4. I don't know. I didn't ask when he was getting up, but I know that we had a meeting at 5 a.m., right? So if we had a meeting at 5 a.m., probably he was like staying up like around 4:30 or something like this, right? And studying Apex for 1 hour before job, right? So this is something that will allow you to move quicker. If you work from 8 to 6, let's say you have a crazy job, right? And you have to start at 8, then you finish at 6. It's I don't know how much. That's a lot. It's like 10 hours, I guess, right? Well, then usually the time that you can dedicate to your programming is before, not after. Because after 10 hours, 9 hours, 8 hours of job, your brain is already fried. Like, I don't know, mine at least definitely fried. I cannot study much after. All right, so we have 5 to 10 hours per week. You believe that you can do it. You have 5 to 10 hours per week. Now, what do you need to do? Now, the only last requirement that we have is doing it for, I don't want to say a long time, because 12 weeks is not long time. But you need, if you're going to be doing it yourself, you're going to need to be willing to do it for a long time, right? For, let's say, for at least 12 weeks, right? At least when I speak about that, you should be doing it for 12 weeks. You should not have like this like fear in your stomach that you're gonna be spending so much time. It should fire you up, right? If you tell for me, for example, that for my own business I have to grind for the next 5 months, that doesn't do anything to me. I am like, yeah, bring it on. let's go, right? So the same for learning Salesforce development. If I say to you that you're gonna spend the next year learning Salesforce development, would it freak you out? If yes, probably you shouldn't be starting with this, okay? Because as much as I can help people to go in like 12 weeks to being Salesforce developers, or to have the skills of Salesforce developers, the learning of Salesforce developer never ends. The 12 weeks, when we end our mentoring, they see that this is only the beginning. Because even if you learn how to write integrations, you're not going to be like a senior developer when you just wrote a couple of integrations. You need to have a real world experience, and you need to repeat it multiple times, and then you're going to be really good at this, right? So the journey, even if you finish the mentoring, you finish a bootcamp, you finish a course, whatever, the journey for Salesforce developer never stops. You literally never stop learning. And when I was working 5 years as a Salesforce developer, I was still learning so much. I was learning every day from my colleagues, from the courses, from YouTube videos, from the projects. I was learning a lot, and you will be learning all the time. So if you're serious about Salesforce development, if you're serious for your career as a Salesforce developer, you're going to be learning for a very long time, probably your whole career, right? So it should not freak you out to learn coding, okay? All right. So we have the requirements. If you feel like everything that I told you in those 12 minutes, if that kind of fires you up, you don't feel like you want to give up after all I told you, then we can go to the next round. So that was part 1. Okay. Now, what do? Right? So here's what I assume. I assume that you have 0 coding skills. If you have some, nice, you're gonna be doing all of this quicker. But I assume that you have 0. So Thomas had 0. What we did with Thomas, and this is something that you absolutely should be doing when you're a beginner, we did not go into anything that can be applied. Anything for the first months. For the first 1 whole month, Thomas could not apply anything that he learned with me. Well, maybe a little bit, like here and there. But the nature of learning Salesforce development is like this, right? So let's say this is 1 month. This is 2 months. And no, come on, what's going on there? And this is 3 months. You see that at 3 months, you are exponentially. Now, what's going on there? You know exponentially more, right? So, comparison to this one. So, basically, the jump in those, let me finish this thing. Here we go. Approximately, that's fine. Yeah. Whatever. So, what I wanna say with this one, I would even move it all the way here somehow. Because the jump between the months in how much you can actually do with the Salesforce development is usually super, super high. So like this delta here, this one, it should be way higher than what you learn. So what do I mean by this? When you learn Salesforce development, in the first couple of months, you're going through the phase, and this is the most annoying phase. And this phase, it can take for some people, if you're self-study, for example. I've seen that this phase can take like 8 months or something. So when you're going through it, you will need to learn syntax, grammar, and all the coding concepts. And that's super annoying, and that's hard because there's a big difference between coding concepts and what you've seen in like real world. Let's take for example variables, right? Variables, the most fundamental coding concept. You have it everywhere in every single programming language. But in real world, we don't have variables. We don't even have anything similar to variables. So our brain is not wired to understand variables. Like not at all. Our brain does not want to understand them. And you have to understand this highly theoretical concept without understanding how to apply this concept. Because the whole application you can start doing probably somewhere here. You can start doing some application stuff, right? Here at this point. But not not in the beginning, right? So here, let's say here it's going to be application. Here you can start applying, but not in the beginning. So you have to understand variables, loops, methods, classes without applying them, and that's hard. What helps in this case, if you are already good with flows, and I guess that if you're a senior level admin, for example, or consultant, you're actually good with flows, right? That's usually what it is. And good news for you, Flow is already programming language. It's a very not sophisticated programming language. It's a very I don't know how to describe it. It's very not powerful programming language in comparison to other programming languages. But it is a programming language. You have all the same concepts, and you have like loops, decision elements, which will be if statements. You have whatever updates, DMLs, and all of this. So you have already everything that you need to learn, right? So if you understand those concepts, understanding this initial phase for you, it's going to be way easier. Okay, it's going to be way easier. This is how you can simplify it. So if you're already good with flows, just know that you're gonna have easier time with Apex than what I'm talking usually about. Okay, so let's say you're just okay-ish with flows, right? You're not like a super good expert with flows. Then the first month, you need to focus on topics, and I'm gonna literally list for you topics that you need to understand. And so, okay, so it's gonna be variables. And then we have classes, we have methods, we have if else. I mean this whole thing, if else, else, like this part. Then you need to understand lists. You need to understand lists, sets, loops, maps. I guess that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So what I usually do is that I separate this. This is going to be the first month, right? So let's make it here. Let's make it like this. Do they have some kind of arrow here? Oh, look at this. Awesome. So this is going to be first month. The worst mistake that you can do at this point is when you want to start with the Salesforce development is that you try to go through this phase as quick as possible. It's a natural instinct. It's a natural thing. I know that you want to do that. I know that you don't want to study those concepts. But this is a mistake. Don't do this. This is a mistake. Try to go very quick over these concepts. It doesn't work. I tried it. I tried it with many students. It never worked. So you don't want to do that. You want to really focus on those concepts. Don't try to go anywhere else until you understand those concepts. I tell you, if you don't understand them, you will not be able to write triggers. You will not be able to write anything else. You need to understand them. And this is what so many people make as a mistake. They go to the trailhead, right, without understanding those concepts or understanding them poorly. Especially, I'm going to highlight for you some topics where you probably going to have some problems. You're going to have problems with methods and sometimes with loops, but not so much with loops. But I would, if I wanted to highlight one topic that people struggle the most, I would say this is method. Right? It doesn't have to be this. If you are good with the flows, for example, you would be able to understand methods relatively quick. But what if you don't, right? I would even put together like methods and classes. They kind of work together. But classes the concept of a class in itself is usually easy to understand for people. The concept of a class plus method is usually harder to understand than, like, for example, how to instantiate a class, how to call a method from a class. Why can you suddenly do static stuff instead of non-static like that? That is usually what's hard to understand for people, right? So you're probably gonna get stuck on those things. And don't move to the next topics until you understand them. Like, really, I just want to scream it to the Salesforce ecosystem, but no one want to listen to me. And then what people do is that they skim over those topics because those beginner topics. Do you understand method? Yeah, well, approximately. I know how to read one. Yeah. No, that's not gonna cut it. It's not enough to understand how to read one. You need to understand how to write one and use one. You need to understand how to use the method. Otherwise, it won't work. So only if you understand how to use methods, you can move forward. I tell you, this is such a fundamental thing that without it, you won't be able to do anything in Apex without understanding methods, anything. It's like building a house without a fundament, like you can't. Another thing that people usually recommend, what you're gonna see is object-oriented programming. It's bullshit. Don't do that. Like, you don't need anything from the object-oriented programming except those here things with the classes and methods. Why you don't need it? Because this this comes from Java to us. Java. And Java, I mean, Apex is similar to Java, right? But it's not the same language. Java is very heavily OP-oriented programming language. They have inheritance, they have this, they have that, interfaces and all this. They have it all the time. They have it so highly embedded in their implementations that they work with those concepts all the time. And I know it because for a very short time, I was a Java developer. I wrote a lot of practica in the university with Java, so I know how they do it. It's not how we do it in Apex. In Apex, the nature of Apex is usually that it is linear because you have business processes that you're trying to automate. So it usually moves, like linear. You don't have that much of the hierarchical thing. So if you see OP, you don't need to do that. Like, don't spend time on that. Okay. Another thing that you probably see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 topics. 6, right? You don't see here 100 topics. You don't see here like 50 topics. And that's because you need to focus on topics that move the needle. You need to focus in the first month, quite frankly, in all months, you need to learn something that's gonna move your development skills the most. If I write you, and I can write you here like 50 topics that you need to learn. But this is not the approach. If you try to learn every single topic in Apex, you're gonna drown into topics. You're not gonna be able to do it. because there's endless amount of topics that you can learn. So don't do this. Focus on topics that will make the biggest impact. And in this case, if you learn those 6 topics, you're going to be able to understand most programming languages, because those topics, they are universal between all programming languages. In fact, if I had to choose like 3 topics that you have to learn, that would be variables, if statements, variables, methods, and loops. With those topics, you can already do some simple stuff with the coding, right? So this should be your main focus of your whole coding journey in the first month, whatever, right? Okay, so I keep it simple on purpose. What about topic that? What about topic that? What about static, non-static? What about access identifiers? All of this, we don't need it. We are trying to make you a developer relatively quick. All right, so you have these topics, right? Let's say you already tackled them. Okay, so the next, what do we do next? Now, this is the second month. This is the second month. Okay. Now, here I'm gonna copy this one. You see that here some topics are also missing that are kind of important. For example, maps. Yeah. You need to learn maps. Maps are super important because you cannot really meaningfully write triggers if you don't understand maps. But at the same time, you cannot understand maps if you don't understand lists and sets. So that's why first you need to learn those easy topics. Okay, maps are a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, people seem it as maps are a super difficult topic. It is not difficult in understanding how maps behave. I can literally explain it in like 3 minutes, right? So the map in itself is a very simple construct, but the application of a map, and this is something that comes later, is a little bit more complex. Like for example, with the triggers, we use maps to capture a change in the record. Like for example, if you have an opportunity that changes the status from prospecting to closed won, right? This is where you would use maps in triggers, and you wouldn't be able to write a trigger for this change if you don't understand maps. But the map in itself, when you're going to be learning it in the first couple of months, it's a super easy thing. It's like one, I think we spent like 1 lesson on it, which is already a lot, but it's still not crazy amount. Okay, so maps, and then what I write here is also SOQL queries, because, and what I mean here with the SOQL queries in Apex. And so you need to understand how to use SOQL queries in Apex. You need to understand how to basically connect Apex, everything that you learned so far. And you see that so far we're only focusing on these things without actually going too deep into stuff like how can you manipulate the database, how can you like get the records into Apex, all of this. Because for that you need to understand SOQL, you need to understand Apex, you need to understand how to combine them, right? Because SOQL in Apex, it's a little bit different from the SOQL itself, because SOQL itself, I don't know what to learn there. Like usually I don't even have a separate lesson on SOQL queries, because you can literally learn it in like, I don't know, like an hour, I guess. So it's not a big deal. So, and usually if you're a senior admin, you already know how to use it in most cases, right? So, but then you need to learn how to use it in Apex. What I mean by that is that, for example, you can have a SOQL query, and the return of the SOQL query can be one record, it can be a list, it can be, you can also use it within a map, right? So you can put a list into a map, like all these type of things. And then we have DMLs, right? So we have DMLs. That's pretty much it with relatively easy topics, right? So this is kind of like finishing up those beginner topics, but a little bit more advanced. So you see, this is the first point where you can already write something that is relevant, something that you can already apply, okay? yeah, so you can apply this thing. Then I usually at this point I start with triggers, but with the simple triggers, and you're gonna find a lot of information on internet like, oh, triggers, I wanna, this is a best practice, this is not a best practice, and all of this. Use trigger framework, use trigger handlers, use all of this. Um, at first step, you need to understand the trigger concept itself, right? So you need to understand how they behave, which means not necessarily following a best practice. So the first step of your understanding the triggers is to understand the mechanics behind it, and just to play around and just to solve trigger stuff, trigger exercises. And usually at this point, what matters is volume. Volume. This is what matters for the simple triggers. So for example, what I have, I give this on the Learn Apex. I have this one with a, I think, how many do we have? We have 13 cases here, and then I have also like additional, yeah. So I would say like in total, I give people like 20 triggers, 20 trigger examples, and in most cases, it's enough to understand how those simple triggers work. Okay, so this is about simple triggers, but and here's where it comes. Simple triggers are completely different from how you would write triggers in the real world, because in the real world you probably would use one of those three things: trigger handlers, trigger framework, or trigger action framework. Almost never you would just use trigger in itself, unless you're super in a hurry and the org, I don't know what could be the use case, but the point is you would probably not use it. So in the real world, you have those three things, and you need to learn or you need to understand those three things, right? So I'm gonna write them here so that you can see trigger handlers, trigger framework, and trigger action framework. Okay, so they look like this, and we basically have, this is like level 1, this is level 2, and this is level 3. And I would say that you should also consider them in this way. And I usually focus on trigger handlers the most. This is where you should really understand them, how people write trigger handlers. Because once you understand trigger handlers, the step to understanding trigger framework is usually super easy. Because essentially trigger framework, like most of the trigger frameworks, it's just trigger handlers on steroids. It's like trigger handlers, but you use custom metadata types to instantiate them, and that's it. So and then maybe as a trigger handler, you also extend the trigger handler. But the point is that it uses the same structure of the code. It's just that it's using like additional tricks how to instantiate the things. So usually I don't go too much into trigger framework, because I explain it very quickly, but I don't really go in very deep into it. And what I don't do is that I don't do this part. I don't do this because, well, our goal is to give you enough understanding so that you can learn on your own. The goal is to make you independent, like I did with Thomas, that now he can go and learn those trigger action framework. Okay, so this thing, don't do this. Trigger framework, do it like partly, like a little bit. You need to understand a little bit, but not much. Trigger handlers, you need to understand very well. Okay, so trigger handlers, go and understand them very well, how they work. You need to be able to use them. You need to be able to apply them. You need to be able to explain on the interview how to use them, and all of this. Okay, so we have here, let's add here trigger handlers and trigger frame and trigger framework. Okay, so that's second month. And a third month, and the third month. And at this point, this is where already you can already use your knowledge on the job, right? So it looked like here when we were studying in the first month, it was like, I'm studying for so long and I cannot apply anything. And then it goes exponentially because you accumulate so much this fundamental knowledge that understanding triggers once you know the fundamental knowledge is super super easy. I tell you, this is like to understand triggers is usually like one lesson. It's not super hard. I More people have troubles with methods than with triggers at this point. So if you are ever getting at this level or even at this level, you can consider yourself set. If you ever finish this level, okay? If you ever finish this level, this one, let's make it like this. Done. If it's done, you'll win. Okay? So what I see is that if you are capable to understand those topics, you are capable of understand all the other topics, and you are capable to become a Salesforce developer and work full-time as a Salesforce developer, okay? You have what it takes. Let's go back what to do in the third month. Okay, so in the third month, I do think that I'm trying to sprint into integrations, right? But you cannot understand integrations unless you understand cubables. And a side quest on this are scheduled, okay? So this is usually the whole topic of a third month. And then if we have time, usually with people, we also start with the LWC. This is a whole different topic. I usually don't do it in like 3 months. The LWC, I had a student, Alexandra here. She also managed in 3 months. She managed also to go as far as doing LWC and Visualforce and integrations and all of this. So this is definitely possible, just not in this case of Thomas, for example. Alexandra was a big outlier, and that usually happens when you have a lot of time that you can invest. So you can totally also go here into LWC stuff. And I think Alexandra, she deployed her first code on the job after first like 10 weeks, and that was LWC, right? So you can also go into the LWC here, which I'm gonna explain a little bit later. Okay, so we have here scheduled, queuable, and integrations. What we don't have here are, for example, future methods, platform events, whatever, like all the other crap that you're gonna hear. You don't need it, because again, we're focusing on the most important things. You can pick up those side things at any point, okay? So you don't need all of this. All right, so this is your path to basically finishing Apex in like 3 months. Now, this was a case of someone who started from complete zero. So you're starting from zero. But I have also students who started not from zero. And the biggest difference is that they don't have to go through this and part of this process, right? So they basically skip 1 month. So they have an additional month. And this is what I'm gonna show here. So if you're starting there, second month, or even sometimes first month. Sorry, no, you're not. What the hell is going on? Let me organize myself a little bit. Come on, like this. Yeah. So I'm not gonna write here what month, because let's just make it like topics how they flow, right? Because that depends which month it's going to be. It depends if you started from zero or you already had some knowledge. So usually when people start, it depends where you start, right? So of course, like if you start here already, are you going to be doing in the first month, you're going to be already here, right? If you start here, well, you're going to spend like probably 3 months doing going up to integrations. Maybe one more important word about integrations. You need to understand there. You need to understand there get, post things, and you need to do real integration. So what I found is that people who do real integration, it starts clicking for them. I have their exercises that are not like a real system. I wrote my own server, so I give these exercises to people to warm up. But then at some point, when you hit that, like when you feel like you understand the limit, the integrations, you're gonna have to go and write an actual integration with the PayPal, for example. That's usually how I do it. Okay, so you have this you have this integrations. After the integrations, and let's assume you don't know those things, you need to go to LWC. And this LWC, it takes 1 whole month at least. LWC, it's a huge topic and there's a lot of stuff to learn. And from my experience, LWC is the weakest part of people. It's the weakest skill in comparison to all the before things. So if you start from zero, you also probably don't know LWC. But even if you don't start from zero, usually you also don't know LWC. Alright, so LWC. How you do it with LWC? Few important things. So LWC, it obviously is using HTML and CSS and JavaScript, right? So it's using those two things. But it is a little bit different. So it is not really using them in the same way as you have it with other programming language. But you still need to understand them very well. Not so much HTML and CSS, especially not so much CSS. Of course, it's better if you, like, the more you know before, the better it is. But I'm gonna take particular case of, I would say Ethan. Yeah, let's take Ethan as a case. He's a good case because he managed to learn. I don't think I have his testimonial. I need to ask him for a testimonial, actually. Ethan, if you're watching this, leave me the testimonial. What the hell? Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna take Ethan as a example here. So he didn't really know that much of LWC before, but he already knew how to code, and he already knew most of these things. What we did with him is that I usually send people to do a short course on HTML and CSS. Like this thing, usually I go into the how do you call this code? How is it? Learn HTML. Code Academy. Yes, this one. No, not this one. Wait a second, not this one. Free Code Camp. Yes, this one. Free Code Camp. This one, perfect. It's really good. Like, it's really good to have a structured. It's free. It basically just does like a quick recaps for you. So you just move through the thing. You move through HTML. You move through JavaScript and all of this. And here, Free Code Camp. Right. This is enough. You can absolutely do it in your free time. I usually don't really spend time explaining this HTML and CSS because, well, can I do it better than Free Code Camp? I don't think so. They spent literally like probably last 15 years trying to make a good course on it. So I'm not doing this. All right. So this Free Code Camp here, it's a good choice. So if you want to brush up, before you can even start with LWC, you need to brush up your skills here. Then with LWC, I'm probably not gonna go into the specifics because they can just be boring listing here all the LWC topics that we do. But I can give you where we are trying to end up. So there are some concepts that you're gonna find actually quite hard to understand. What I think people have troubles understanding usually. And this is something so that you can focus your mind on going a little bit deeper into these topics. And then if you struggle with them, you know that it's okay, it's not a big deal because everyone struggles with them. So we have here promises. Promises or everything that is like async JavaScript, right? So like everything that has to do with this type of things. So we have promises and and then we have functional programming. And the reason why I'm gonna just PR functional programming, because the reason for the functional programming is that this is the first time people even hear about it. This is the first time people are like, wow, you can program without writing loops. Like, what the hell? This is completely new for me, and I get it. Like, this is completely new. This is a very nice way of programming. This is an interesting way. It's something where you're like, wow, my mind is like, it's mind-blowing thing. And that's where usually I hear stuff like, yeah, I understand how to do it, but I'm not really like proficient with this. Even for my students, right? Even when I give my students, I explain them, okay, so this is how you can do it. This is how you do a filter, for example, filter function, how you can filter something without doing loops. And they're like, oh wow, that's cool, but I'm not really sure I can like on my own confidently do that. And that's normal. Like, you don't have to. Like, we're not trying to make you a senior developer here. We're trying to make you a functional developer, like a developer that can actually perform the job. Can you perform your JavaScript job without a functional programming? Yeah, absolutely, right? But is it better with the functional programming? Yeah, it is better. So you need to at least know about it. And then some students, they kind of go into it, like they kind of like it, and it clicks for them and they start using the functional programming. So yeah, functional programming is cool in JavaScript, but it's also not something that you should be overusing and not something that you should be spending a lot of time learning. But you need to kind of understand that it exists and you need to play around with those things. And because there are like a very nice way of writing stuff with the functional programming in JavaScript, and you're going to be using it even without understanding that you're actually using this thing. Okay, so I'm gonna make it a little bit longer here to list more topics for you that you need to focus on. Obviously, I'm not gonna list things like custom components or something like this. It's obvious. It's like a core of LWC. I'm just gonna say core LWC. Core LWC should come before promises and all of this. Like core LWC, this is where you learn like, I don't know, like how LWC works in general, how to combine two components, not how to combine two components, how to like how to create a button, how to make this button work, how to combine HTML and JavaScript in LWC, all these things, right? Then another topic that people struggle with, and I don't understand why, is the life cycle. Life cycle should be an easy topic, but it's kind of hard usually for people to comprehend what's going on there with a connected callback, with a rendered callback and all this. So, and I guess another reason why people struggle with this is that because you cannot really practice too much. So this is like such a theoretical concept that you cannot like volume practice this part. Right? You can volume practice core LWC because you can go and create 10 different LWC components, but you cannot do it with the lifecycle. All right, so lifecycle is something that you should focus on. Also, like, don't spend a lot of time on it, but try to understand it. So we have lifecycle. What else? What else am I missing? There's another topic that people struggle with that I forgot. Oh yeah, events. Events, and I also add here like pop-up here. Okay, so events, something that probably I should elaborate a little bit more. What do I mean by events? So events You have a couple of things there, right? So you have child to parent, and another one is that you have parent to child, right? You need to understand these things, this both, but then you also need to understand something like component 1 to component 2 to component 3. Like, you need to understand how to combine not only one level of hierarchy between two different events, two different components, but you need to understand how to combine multiple hierarchies. It's like when you have like one component and then you have oh, come on, and then you have another one inside. Let's say like this. Okay, so this is more realistic. Okay, so you have one and then you have another one here, right? You have another one here, and then you have another one here. Okay, so how do you make now this component here to communicate with the outer one? Yeah, this is the thing that you need to understand the most. Okay, and this is a little bit hard to understand. Okay, so this is what we have. We have this events, okay, and obviously also like other way around. How can you pass something from the parent into the component? But that's usually super easy to. No, what's going on? Come on, come back now. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted to say like this. How to pass it there? Okay. All right. So when you understand this. Another thing that I forgot actually. LWC plus Apex. That's usually not hard topic to understand, but it is a little bit confusing with all the wire stuff. And usually what I try to focus here is just imperative Apex. Like, so basically what I try to do here is how do you actually like explicit imperative, whatever. I don't know how to write it in English, whatever. So how can you call Apex directly from LWC? And I don't want to go too much into stuff like wire or something like this, even though we discuss it, but it's not the point. Like, if you know one way that works for you, and the imperatively call, this is usually like direct call. This is usually the way you want to do it, and this is the easiest way, so I usually focus on this type of things. Okay, so we have these parts, we have events. Now you know events, life cycles, functional programming, promises, you know how to call Apex, you know how to combine all these things. Awesome. It's all good. Obviously, I did not say here stuff like SLDS, custom components, all of this. This is all obvious. You can find it everywhere. This is just core LWC. This is just basics. Okay, so we have this, and I would say that's pretty much it. Now, at this point, when we cover with people enough LWC topics, what I do is that I give them at least five cases on different functionality around LWC for practice. So after you do all of this, you need to add to all of this also practice with volume. Do not underestimate how much it matters in LWC, right? So you need to practice with volume. Maybe another thing that I did not mention here is something like inheritance. For example, create lookup in a table, something like this. So this is basically when you in a table. So this is basically where you extend the lightning table and then you create another cell type in the table. This is also a topic that we usually discuss with people that are doing great and that are quite advanced. Okay, So we have this and practice with volume. Yes, this is very important. You need to practice with volume. You need to do it. It works in almost all cases. It works. Doesn't matter how advanced you are. It works in a lot of cases. So this is about LWC. And now we're coming into the fun part. Now we're coming into part that people that are more advanced, they usually don't discuss those type of things. And it means visual force. Visual force and aura. I discuss those things with my students. I know that those type of things, they are outdated. I know that visual force is used mainly for just PDF creation, but I still do it. Like, it still makes sense to discuss them. Like, it does, because I guess the main sense that you need for them is for PD1. PD1, yeah. So that's another part of it. I don't want to put here months on it because it's all very individual. I have a student like Ethan, for example. He did it very quick, but then I have another student who took a little bit more time with this. Like, that all depends on you. So I'm not gonna put time label on that, right? I showed you the main thing, how to do it in, like, how to go from zero to write integrations in 12 weeks. Now I'm showing you the stuff that you can do to learn every single part of Salesforce development, okay? So this is usually what we do: Visual Force, Aura, and PD1. Then the next topic that I suggest people is PD2. Platform Developer 2. You're like, oh, what the hell? Like, Platform Developer 2 shouldn't be Platform Developer 1 or something? Nah, Platform Developer 1 is an easy certification. If you're really good, if you have made it so far, PT1, you can do it in like a week. It's not hard. So usually the people that I work with are senior admin, senior consultant. If you're a senior admin and you already know how to code and you're at this stage where you're doing LWC stuff, you're basically already a developer. Doing PD1 for you, it's an easy thing, okay? So PD1 is super easy. PD2, this is important because this is the thing that's gonna differentiate you as a high achiever doing my mentoring and all of this. Obviously, even if you're watching this video, you're interested in those things, it means that you are definitely like ahead 99% of people. And if you're doing the mentoring with me, that means that you're probably like super invested into your career. You're investing money, time, everything, right? So PD2 will be just the confirmation of those qualities. It's important to not only have the qualities, right? Because you know that you are the high achiever. You know that you're like killing at your career, right? But you need also to show it to people. And if you're as a senior Salesforce admin, if you show Platform Developer 2, that's gonna play a lot into your image. It's gonna give you a lot of credits. It's different from Platform Developer 1. Platform Developer 1, literally everyone has it. Even people who don't know how to code have PD1, right? Because they needed to get the architect there in the hierarchy of those certifications. So PD1 is not such a big of a deal. Like, I never even, you see me mentioning PD1 somewhere before? No, because we are focusing on building the skills, right? We are focusing on making actually impact on your skills and making you a developer, and this is all we're doing. And then as a side effect of this, as a byproduct of this, passing PD1 is not a big of a deal. You can do it like literally studying parallel to what we are doing here with Visual Force and Aura. Okay, so this is relatively easy. Then the next thing that we do is, it's kind of in parallel. That's why I'm putting it here, because usually we are already practicing it all the time, like here in parallel. Is that we are studying Git. Git, it's crazy that no one learns Git before they start working as a developer. But this is something that you are using as a developer. You would be using literally every single day Git, every single day. So you learn. Let me close it. This meeting is actually cancelled, so I need to remove it. So don't worry, I'm not getting late for a meeting. So Git is something that people literally leave out. They never study. Okay, so learn Git and then learn stuff like SFTX and stuff like DevOps. Those are not sexy topics, but those are very sexy topics when you're getting hired. This is what differentiates you a lot from other people, because probably no one even mentions that they know SFDX and all this stuff. But that's going to help you as a developer. That's going to help you a lot. You do need to understand them very well, because you're going to be working with those type of things. You're going to be working every day, and that's just crazy to skip this part. Just crazy. Okay? So we have this. Can I? Perfect. All right. So you have Git. At this point, you're already pretty good, right? You already have all the needed skills. Now, what's going on there? Okay, so now at this point, you're already really good, and at this point, you don't need to go and necessarily do additional skills getting, but now you're coming into the point where you need to market yourself good. Marketing. And this is something that a lot of people miss, right? So you need to do the marketing. And what do I mean by marketing? We can actually put this platform developer 2 somehow into marketing part. Let me put it like this. Marketing. Right? So platform developer 2, it's part of the marketing. Even platform developer 1, it's part of the marketing. Right? You need to signal to the world that you have the skills that are needed. Right? So at this point, we're also doing the job search. Job search. Important. And it's super important. Another thing. Except job search. Maybe I'm struggling with those things here. Okay, so we have a job search. And here, your GitHub profile. You need to brush up your GitHub profile, and you need to present your project and everything that you've done so far in a very good way. You need to showcase it. You can go as much as I had a student who created like a whole website with like website builder. Don't do your own website with the LWC components or something. But you do need to show people. And usually what we do is that the way you show it is on the GitHub, because developers hang out there. And then you also need to do the job search. And this is where I help people as well, but I don't put a lot of stuff there. The most help that I do, this is not mostly depends on you. I can't help you that much there, but that's mostly about if you can handle rejections, if you can apply for a lot of different jobs, how can you present yourself on the job interview, and all of this. Usually when it comes to the job search, I don't have that many students actually searching for a new job after my mentoring, because most of my people, they already work very well on the job that they have, and they usually just get a raise on the job that they're working. So this is the whole thing. It started, I wanted to show you how to become a Salesforce developer in 12 weeks. I actually showed you the whole process. I only thought showing you this, but then I realized, okay, why don't I show you for someone like how to move further? And this is usually the way I do it. it doesn't take 12 weeks. It's important. You cannot do all of this in 12 weeks. That's impossible. You can definitely do like parts of it in 12 weeks. Even if you study a lot, you cannot do it in 12 weeks, even with the mentoring. Like, it's just not reasonable. What is reasonable is that you can do this part in 12 weeks, and then also this in additional 12 weeks if you're doing it on your own and if you're really resourceful, or you can also or you can get the mentoring, and we can, if you already have some developer skills, then we can move you through this whole thing in under 12 weeks for sure. That's kind of that's kind of it. That's kind of it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you wanna do the same what I did with the Thomas, what I did with Ethan, come on, where is it? Thomas went through this whole thing in 12 weeks, and he is now writing integrations. If you want to do the same thing, hit me on LinkedIn. I have one, maybe two additional seats for 2024 left, and otherwise you can also go, and if you want to do it yourself, you can go here to the learnapex.com, and you can purchase the course when it's out. That's all the ways you can do it. Or you can also join our community of those type of developers who are moving through this thing, and that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.